Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, Microsoft plots a massive AI mutiny against its own partners. The tech workforce splits into two distinct classes, and we officially enter the era of, well, a fed, human-finished culture.
It's a huge shift today.
It really is. We're bringing you your raw, synthesized intelligence wire for July 8, 2026. For you listening, this is your deep dive into the underlying currents moving the markets, the technology, and the culture right now.
Yeah, we're pulling from a massive stack of real-time data today.
Exactly. Developer forums, live prediction markets, frontline tech worker surveys, raw code commits. Our mission is to just, cut through the surface-level PR announcements and figure out what these shifts actually mean for your business and your career.
And we really have to look past the consensus on this one, because right now the consensus is hiding some incredibly dangerous traps.
Oh, for sure.
Like, everyone gets distracted by the benchmark scores of these new models, but if you watch the capital flow, who is actually getting squeezed out of the infrastructure, how developers are basically rationing their API calls just to survive, you see a completely different landscape taking shape. We really need to map out those second-order effects today.
Let's start right there, actually, with the capital flow and what looks like a massive market rebellion. We are tracking a viral post from the handle at Polymarket, and it correlates with a Bloomberg report that just dropped this morning.
Right, the Microsoft story.
Yeah, Microsoft is reportedly beginning to strip OpenAI and Anthropic models out of their enterprise software, specifically Excel and Outlook.
Wow.
They are routing tens of thousands of weekly user prompts away from their partners and funneling them into their own in-house AI family, which they're calling MAI.
MAI.
Yeah. And the driving force here is their AI CEO, Mustafa Suleyman, and the goal is purely 100% to cut API costs.
I mean, this is the inevitable collision, right, between the theoretical promise of AI and the brutal reality of corporate profit margins.
Yeah.
Suleyman just wants to eliminate that massive spend required to hit a third-party frontier model every single time an office worker asks Excel to summarize a basic spreadsheet.
It adds up fast.
It does. So the strategy is to train their own MAI models from scratch for these targeted reasoning and coding tasks. But I gotta say, the market is heavily fading this strategy.
Totally fading.
If you look at that at Polymarket data, the prediction odds give Microsoft an abysmal 8% chance of actually deploying a top-tier, frontier-level model by December 31st.
An 8% probability is essentially the market saying, yeah, you're going to fail.
Pretty much.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just mandate a cutting-edge reasoning engine into existence just to save a few cents per query. If I'm an enterprise user, and I'm trying to execute a complex data transformation in Excel, and suddenly the system starts hallucinating or dropping context because it's running on a cheaper, heavily quantized in-house model instead of GPT-4, Claude, that breaks the entire workflow.
It ruins the trust.
Right. And the perceived value of the software just plummets.
Precisely. They are risking the core product experience just to optimize their back-end compute bill. It really highlights a critical vulnerability in the current tech stack, which is that the intelligence layer is simply too expensive to sustain at scale for mundane tasks.
Well, and that friction around who pays for the compute, it's actually rewriting the fundamental architecture of the web right now.
Oh, absolutely.
This ties directly into a fascinating post from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong at Brian Armstrong. He's highlighting this new monetization gateway rolled out by Cloudflare.
This is a huge deal.
He claims, quote, "Finally, the web has native monetization. Ads were not the only way." He's talking about the deployment of the OpenBuy 402 protocol.
Yeah, and this protocol is a foundational threat to the ad-driven internet.
How so?
Well, the I402 protocol allows for native web monetization via stablecoin micropayments, right? And it settles peer-to-peer right at the network edge.
Oh, no middleman.
Exactly. It doesn't rely on a centralized payment processor taking a 3% cut.
Okay, right. I understand the crypto settlement layer part, but break down the mechanics of why this is killing the ad networks specifically.
Because the entity doing the browsing is no longer human, right? Autonomous AI agents are the ones out there traversing the web now, scraping data, querying APIs, executing tasks. An AI agent doesn't have a user account, and more importantly, an AI agent does not look at banner ads.
Right, doesn't care about a shoe discount.
It cannot be influenced by a targeted marketing campaign. So that traditional value exchange of the internet, I give you free content, you look at my ads, it completely collapses.
I see. So the publisher needs a completely new way to charge for the data.
Yes.
And this monetization gateway allows the publisher server to instantly negotiate a microtransaction with the AI agent. Like, the agent pays a fraction of a cent in stablecoins for the data it scrapes instantly.
Exactly. It's a direct value exchange. There are no ad networks, no data brokers sitting in the middle extracting rent. The agent just pays for its own compute and data consumption natively.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And while the virtual infrastructure is finding these hyper-efficient new routes, we are actually seeing the exact same dynamic play out in physical macro infrastructure, too.
Right, the space tech stuff.
Yeah. Sundar Pichai, at Sundar Pichai, just posted about Google's new FireSat constellation. They launched 3 more satellites via SpaceX early this morning.
I saw that.
And they're using advanced multispectral infrared sensors combined with Google AI to spot wildland fires as small as 5 by 5 meters from orbit.
Which is incredibly small.
Yeah, and the goal is to refresh this global data every 20 minutes.
See, this is a perfect example of applied AI solving a latency problem in the physical world. Historically, satellite imagery for fire detection relied on massive, high-intensity heat signatures.
So the fire had to be huge already.
Exactly, which meant fires were only detected after they were already out of control. FireSat completely changes that mechanism.
Because it's not just taking a dumb picture. The AI is processing the multispectral data locally to differentiate the infrared signature of a tiny brush fire from, say, a hot asphalt parking lot or an industrial flare.
Correct. It runs the inference directly on the data stream up there.
Yeah.
It is the absolute antithesis of like a chatbot writing a poem. It's an invisible, highly specialized intelligence layer applied directly to physical infrastructure.
It's essentially a near real-time smoke detector for the entire planet.
It really is.
Which brings us to the actual engines powering all this intelligence. The tech and innovation sector is experiencing a complete arms race right now.
Total chaos.
The official handle at OpenAI just announced that GPT 5.6, codenamed Sol, is launching Thursday, alongside 2 smaller models, Terra and Luna.
Right.
But the real story isn't the software, honestly. It's the hardware rumors. We're tracking a post from at NS123ABC claiming Sol is a 2.2 trillion parameter model.
Massive.
And it's allegedly being served across 70 Cerebra's WSE3 wafers.
The hardware architecture required to run this is just staggering. I mean, for those not deep in the silicon weeds, a wafer-scale engine means instead of chopping a silicon wafer into dozens of individual chips that have to, talk to each other across a motherboard, Cerebra's keeps the entire wafer intact as one giant chip.
Right, and the rumor is they are prioritizing SRAM bandwidth over traditional heavy cache designs. Now, I know SRAM is fast, but why design a system this massive just to optimize memory bandwidth?
Because with a 2.2 trillion parameter model, your bottleneck isn't the processing power anymore. It's moving the data from memory to the compute cores.
Oh, the traffic jam.
Right. Traditional GPUs waste precious milliseconds just fetching data from separate memory banks. By prioritizing on-chip SRAM across a full wafer, you drastically reduce that latency. The parameters are stored practically next door to the processing units.
Which explains the performance metrics people are seeing then. Pietro Sciarrano, at Sciarrano, claims Sol is the best model he's ever touched.
He was pretty hyped.
Very. He noted he hasn't even needed to verify his front-end code in 2 months because the model is just that reliable.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't buy that this is a total victory for OpenAI. Let's look at the actual trenches of complex software engineering.
Let's do it.
AI investor Matt Schumer, he had early access to Sol, and he argues that Anthropic's Claude Fable 5 is still vastly superior for long-horizon agentic tasks.
Yeah, he stated that one Fable turn achieves what multiple Sol turns require.
Exactly.
Well, Schumer is highlighting the difference between speed and deep reasoning here. Fable is what Anthropic classifies as a Mythos-class model. It is designed specifically to maintain coherence over thousands of lines of code and multiple steps of logic.
But that level of reasoning introduces a severe economic constraint, doesn't it?
Oh, massive!
The quota limits. We are seeing major outcry on developer hubs today. The handle at Testing Catalog reported that enterprise users are constantly begging Anthropic to reset their API limits.
They're maxing out instantly.
Yeah. Fable 5 is incredibly compute-heavy, costing up to $50 per million output tokens. Developers are burning through their weekly operational budgets in a matter of days.
So they have to engineer around the cost. Look at the architecture being shared by Matthew Berman, at Matthew Berman. He is demonstrating a hybrid routing strategy.
Oh, it's clever.
Really clever. He uses Fable 5 strictly for the high-level architecture, so defining the scope, planning the logic, and setting the parameters. Then his system automatically routes the actual execution, like the repetitive coding and pull requests, down to a cheaper model like GPT 5.5 or Claude Sonnet.
That's brilliant. It's essentially creating a synthetic corporate hierarchy.
Yes.
You pay the premium for the AI manager to design the system, and you use the cheap AI labor to write the boilerplate.
Exactly. And Berman claims this nets a 60% reduction in API costs without losing quality.
But it makes me wonder, why rely on these proprietary APIs at all? The open source community is always promising a way out of this trap.
Well, the open source stream is hitting a brutal physical wall right now.
Is it?
Yeah. Theo posted an analysis of Zipper's new GLM 5.2 open weights model. Now, it boasts a 1 million token context window and incredible performance. But Theo completely dismantles the myth of the quote-unquote self-hosted developer.
Because you can't run a 1 million token context window on a MacBook.
You can't even run it on a standard server rack without massive VRAM.
Right.
The memory required to hold the model weights, plus the KV cache for 1 million tokens of context, it demands hardware that only major institutions can afford. The gap between what an independent hobbyist can run locally and what a centralized cluster can deliver is becoming an unbridgeable chasm.
And that chasm is bleeding directly into the human workforce. This is where the data gets genuinely alarming.
Yeah, the Lenny survey.
All right, Lenny Rachitsky at Lenison released his 2026 Tech Worker Survey, and it shows the workforce completely bifurcating. Half the tech sector feels amplified. They're shipping faster, taking on more scope, and just thriving.
And the other half?
The other half feels completely diminished. Burnout is tracking at 55.7%, which is up a full 11 points from last year. And get this, 53% of respondents said they would actively discourage newcomers from entering their specific roles.
We have to ask, what is actually driving that burnout, though? Is it the fear of being replaced, or is it something else? Because if you dig into Lenny's crosstabs, only 22% of these workers actually fear imminent job loss.
So it's not the AI taking their jobs.
No. The existential dread is almost entirely rooted in workload pressure.
It's a Jevons paradox applied to human labor.
Exactly.
As the efficiency of writing code increases, the demand for output doesn't stay flat. It skyrockets. If the AI makes you 3 times faster, your employer doesn't let you log off at 2 p.m.
Of course not.
They expect you to ship 3 times as many features. The treadmill just sped up to a sprint, and half the industry is tripping over their own feet.
And it completely changes the baseline of what skills are valuable. Look at Yuchen Jim from Databricks at Yuchen W, who noted that traditional LeetCode algorithmic interviews are completely dead. Top engineering talent refuses to do them because why test human memorization of binary tree inversions when a tiny 3 billion parameter local LLM can solve it instantly?
I see the logic, I really do. But I have to push back on the idea that deep, low-level engineering is obsolete.
Okay, why?
Because the tools change, but the need for human ingenuity doesn't. Take the post from Matt Pocock at Matt Pocockus. He highlighted a developer named Shannon Jackson who just spent a grueling 12 months developing novel SIMD techniques that's single instruction, multiple data, specifically tailored for context-sensitive languages like JavaScript.
That is a phenomenal example, actually. For context for you listening, SIMD allows a CPU to process an entire chunk of data simultaneously with a single command, rather than evaluating it character by character.
Right. It's heavily used in graphics rendering, but applying it to parse a messy, highly dynamic language like JavaScript, that requires a massive architectural leap.
Exactly. Jackson didn't just ask an LM to write code. She spent months failing, understanding the physical constraints of modern CPUs, and then mapping that against the logical constraints of the language.
Yeah.
She ultimately delivered an 80 to 200% performance gain that will accelerate engines like V8. An AI model relies on patterns it has seen before. It can brute force combinations, sure, but it doesn't possess the architectural taste or the pure persistence to invent a fundamentally novel paradigm when the current physics fail.
It requires human volition to chart a new path.
Yes.
Which segues perfectly into a deeply philosophical post from Peter Steinberger today at Stay Beat. He highlighted a concept from an Atlantic piece by David Brooks that really defines this exact moment we're in. Quote, "When intelligence is plentiful, volition is valuable."
That reframes the entire dynamic.
It really does. Brooks argues society is polarizing into active wrestlers and passive outsourcers. The active wrestlers use this massive surplus of cheap intelligence to tackle much harder previously impossible challenges. They are building their mental capacity.
Right.
It makes me think of an AI model as a piece of gym equipment. You can either sit there, let the hydraulic machine do the lifting for you and build zero muscle mass, or you can use the AI as a spotter to bench press twice the weight you ever could on your own, right? You push your own limits.
That's a great way to look at it. And we are seeing the extreme manifestations of both approaches on the wire today. Let's look at the active wrestlers first. Wharton professor Ethan Mollick at eMollick leveraged the Fable 5 model to engineer an application called Annals. It's a fully procedural 3D fantasy kingdom simulator.
I played with this. And the technical execution is wild. It simulates trade routes, population dynamics, political lineages, and it's all contained within a single HTML file running locally in the browser.
Right, and he achieved it by wrestling with the model. He wrote complex prompts specifying deterministic generation via mathematical seeds. He integrated Three.js for the seasonal rendering, and he built an auto-director camera logic.
All by himself.
All by himself. There's no back-end server. He directed the intelligence surplus to manifest a really complex vision. Similarly, look at Tharik at TreQ212. He built a custom harness using Fable and Python scripts to autonomously edit 60 gigabytes of raw video footage.
Wow.
He integrated Whisper for transcription and generated low-resolution proxies to completely bypass the compute bottlenecks of rendering high-res files during the edit.
So he used the AI to solve the structural problem, not just to do the basic task.
Exactly.
But then we have the passive outsourcers. And this is where the allocation of resources gets fascinating. There was a viral post from @Lavelcio. He decided he wanted some fruit, right? But rather than opening the Uber Eats app and tapping a few buttons, he utilized Claude Code and a browser automation framework called Playwright to write a script that logged into the web interface, navigated the menus, and ordered a pack of bananas.
I mean, it is a remarkable, if slightly absurd, demonstration of removing friction.
Totally absurd.
It successfully ordered 1.25 kilograms of bananas for €7.38. But analytically, if you calculate the API token cost of running a frontier model to generate that browser automation code, debug it, and execute it,
Oh, man.
the compute overhead almost certainly cost more than the fruit itself.
Definitely.
We have engineered artificial superintelligence, and a segment of the population is deploying it simply to avoid the minor physical effort of swiping on a screen.
It's an incredible flex of capability, but it perfectly illustrates the cultural vibe right now. We are in an era of absolute acceleration. Nikita Beer, at Nikita Beer, posted data showing X just crossed 4.399 billion visits in June.
That's huge.
It is serving as the central nervous system for this massive cultural transition. Everyone is logged in, hyper-aware of the shifting stakes, watching the active wrestlers build entirely new software paradigms while the passive outsourcers, script browser bots to buy groceries.
The visibility of this divide is what makes it so intense. There is no longer any ambiguity about what the tools can do. The only variable left is the ambition of the user.
And in a high-stakes environment where intelligence is completely commoditized, ambition becomes the differentiator. There's a post from @TBPN referencing a framework from Alex Hormozi and Naval Ravikant. The premise is simple. Building a local successful restaurant is incredibly difficult and requires 80-hour work weeks. Building a globally scaled billion-dollar unicorn is also incredibly difficult and requires 80-hour work weeks. The pain and the effort are constants. Therefore, you are basically obligated to pick the vehicle with the highest possible upside.
And the AI models are the ultimate high upside vehicles, but they do not drive themselves.
No, they don't.
Which brings us to a singular 4-word post from Jack Dorsey today, @Jack, that elegantly summarizes this entire data set. A-fed, human finished.
A-fed, human finished. I love that.
That is the defining aesthetic and operational reality of 2026. Whether you are generating a 3D kingdom in a browser, processing multispectral satellite data, or writing novel SIMD architecture. The artificial intelligence generates the raw material. It processes the vast data sets and feeds the pipeline.
Right.
But human volition, the persistence to overcome a hallucination, the architectural taste to know when a system is flawed, the drive to push past the friction that is the final, irreplaceable filter. Without the human finish, you just have a massive, expensive pile of generated noise.
The divide between the amplified and the diminished really does come down to who provides that final human filter. All right, looking at all the data flowing across the wire today, what is your specific prediction for tomorrow? Where does this trend line break next?
Based on the capital pressures we discussed, my prediction is that we're going to see a highly visible, beloved consumer startup announce they are abandoning frontier models to bring their AI infrastructure in-house, citing efficiency.
Like the Microsoft move.
Exactly. And the market is going to punish them ruthlessly for it. Their user base will revolt because the nuanced quality of the product will degrade instantly. The chasm between the amplified workers who leverage the best models via intelligent routing and the diminished companies trying to cut corners on compute is just going to widen dramatically.
It's a stark warning against treating intelligence as a place to cut corners. Which leads you, listening, with a final thought to mull over today. We've established that the raw capacity to reason and generate is now cheap and plentiful, making human volition the only truly scarce asset left in the economy. So, how long until the capital markets realize this, and we start seeing algorithmic systems explicitly designed not to do our work for us, but to synthetically manufacture human motivation?
That's a wild thought.
Right. If willpower is the final bottleneck, the next trillion-dollar company won't build a model that writes your code. They will build a model that maps your dopamine receptors to ensure you have the relentless drive to finish it yourself. Keep an eye on those second-order effects. We will be back tomorrow, synthesizing the next data drop. This is the Daily Vibecasting, signing off.